Hey guys, Taylor here, and I just want to let you know that in the next few videos, you're going to meet a really good friend of mine named Collin Morris. Collin runs an amazing podcast called Zion 2.0, in which he has conversations with tons of different people about human development, human psychology, and the future of our society. So pretty big questions, really cool conversations, and really cool people. He was very nice enough to interview me for his podcast, so if you'd like to listen to that, go ahead and click around to the appropriate link, I think down below. But he was nice enough to return the favor as well and be interviewed and have conversations with me on camera. So I wanted to let you know that the next few videos, including after this, are going to be of Collin and me talking about lots of different topics still related to our overlapping fields of human psychology and mental health and life success and happiness and fulfillment in a much more unstructured kind of way. Now, just to let you know, total transparency, these videos were filmed about a month or two ago, so you'll see me still with a beard, so don't be surprised by that. But I really hope you enjoy. I'll introduce each video so that you know what's coming, what we're talking about. But in this first one, we dive into what it means to be an expert, and if expertise is really a thing, and if it's not, how and why do we keep learning the ways that we want to learn and the things that we want to do. But we also talk about how to transcend any obstacles that get in your path, and as well as different ways that conversations like the one that Collin has on his podcast and like I have with my clients can help you transcend any obstacles that you face in your life too. So I really hope you enjoy. I'm excited about it. Collin and I had a lot of fun doing these videos. You'll see the same outfits in these videos too, because we ended up filming for like multiple hours, and so there's just a lot of conversations and content that we broke up into smaller videos. So hope you enjoy, and I will talk to you soon. Collin, why is your brand called Zion 2.0? Because I've told a lot of people about you and your podcast, and they're always like, ooh, Zion, that's a cool word. I don't think a lot of people know what it means. So what's it mean for you?
The interesting thing about it is it has a meaning for me, and there's a reason why I created it. But the thing that's also been exciting is when I ask people what it means to them, people have different associations with what it is. So Zion basically just means freedom, liberation, utopia, and it has different roots in different cultural traditions. So there's a Jewish lineage, and then there's to the Rastafarians, Zion means liberation.
Sure.
And we're in Salt Lake City, and Mormons have a pretty unique association with Zion too, but the commonality is all about utopia, about some sort of like idealized state. Either it's a physical place, either it's a state of mind, it's part of a conception of an afterlife. And 2.0 is just the next version, so the next iteration of utopia. So Zion 2.0 is the name of my podcast because I wanted to bring in people who are thinking about the next iteration of either their personal version of utopia, so like their idealized life, people who are open to that version changing based on life circumstance, based on a new sort of insight about their personal development, based on knowledge about the future or uncertainty about the future in preparation for that. So I wanted to keep it broad enough, but have enough sort of unique interpretations to be able to pull on people from a lot of different fields for conversations.
Gotcha. Do you feel like you have to be pigeonholed at all with like who you talk to on your podcast? Because our conversations and kind of what you just shared is you're talking about so many people with so many different perspectives and so many unique perspectives on what their personal Zion or what the societal Zion could look like. So do you find yourself trying to find certain types of individuals for your podcast, or are you yeah, like what's your criteria basically for who you're looking for? Because you and I are really good at we're good at talking to people about anything.
Yeah.
We could just riff off of conversations forever, which is kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But for the sake of you now doing this as a business, I wonder what kind of restraints you put on yourself.
Well, I knew starting out, I recorded my first conversation in November of last year, and I knew that I wanted to keep it as open-ended as possible so I could have time to iterate the different types of people that I would have on. So at first it was just reaching out to people in my immediate network who I knew were interesting people. So the first conversation I had was with this guy, Collin Pugh, who he runs a group called the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society. And I found him on meetup.com, went to a couple of his meetings, and learned that he has a fascinating story and basically reconnected to Christianity through an experience with LSD. It's like, that's an interesting thing to jump from. So I knew for the first bit I wanted to keep it open-ended, but now I feel like the criteria is becoming a little bit more specific. I'm kind of honing in on what it is this project is about.
Okay.
And I think what that is people who are actively thinking about and strategizing for the future, which is still pretty broad.
Yeah.
But people who are big thinkers and have learned a lot in their lives and are this actually might relate to some of the work that you do with your individual clients. I'm finding people that have figured out tools to transcend specific mindsets that make them feel stuck.
Sure.
And when you're able to get past that capacity, you are a lot more effective in seeing a bigger picture and holding more perspective. So I still have a lot of learning and growing to do in my life, and a lot of this impetus for the podcast was who can I learn from? And if I start a podcast, people will be more inclined to come talk to me.
True.
Yeah. So
that's fair.
So my place in the podcast, I'm not positioning myself as an expert on anything. I want to be the one who is asking the questions because I genuinely want to know, and in a certain sense, need to know.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up the word expert. Do you believe that anybody is an expert at anything?
That's a good question. I think yes, people can be experts in very specific fields.
Okay.
I'm not interested in people that display an incredible amount of hubris or certainty. I think that's another thing. Is people who think they have all the answers and are sort of done learning. Not really interested in those people.
Sure.
Because there's always things to learn. You can be an expert in a very specific type of field, but I think continuous learning is the ability to recognize patterns and how your level of expertise is connected to a web of different ways of knowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my next question for you was are we then talking just about the fact that somebody's an expert in their ability to learn stuff? Or are they an expert in a certain area? But it sounds like what your last comment right then was that it was a combination.
Yeah.
Where, you're an expert in a certain area, but you're not done. You're never done.
Right.
None of us are ever done. But then there's that aspect of taking it the next step.
Yeah.
Of making sure that you're continuing to evolve or progress whatever you're an expert in.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you find that balance with your own business? Because you've had a business for 4 years now.
Right.
You're a life coach, so you have to position yourself as someone who knows things.
Right.
Or else why would they come to you to pay you?
Sure.
So how do you find the balance between saying, I have something that you might be able to benefit from, but also be able to present that you are still learning as well? What's that balance?
Sure. Well, first of all, I never tell anybody that I'm an expert, because that's the hubris you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was curious in asking you because I personally think that the word expert is something that we've put way too much weight on in modern society, because we want to know who are the thought leaders, we want to know who are the experts, that we could go to. For sure, these are people that are resources that we could go to. So I think it's a recognition, it's more a recognition of, oh, you have some valuable resource that I would like to have access to.
Mm-hmm.
What that is, in quotes, is like someone recognizing that a coach or some kind of company or some kind of provider has some kind of like value or some kind of knowledge, and may or may not be an expert in their minds. So I don't think about the word expert a lot in my work. It is purely, I don't know, on just the most simplest level, it's like what I offer is a knowledge base and a perspective base and strategies that I've learned. And, you know, even if I just had like one perspective and one strategy, so just two little things.
Mm-hmm.
So if I started my business like 8 years ago or something, when I had learned one thing in the mental health field,
mm-hmm.
I could still start a business based off that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
People could still pay you just based on one perspective. But I started my business after almost, 8 years in the mental health field. So I had learned so many perspectives, so many techniques, so many things. And then I was like, all right, I have all this stuff here. And that's when I was able to make a much more comprehensive offering to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I make it very clear when I'm working with a client, and actually a client of mine called it this the other day, that it's very much a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not an expert in the sense that I'm going to tell clients what to do. That's not what a coach does.
Mm-hmm.
A coach guides the client, so it's a very connective relationship.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was like
laughing at my work.
No, seriously, no.
This is how disrespectful Collin is about the mental health field.
No.
Everybody.
I was like really connected with you, and then in my mind popped up so how are things at the Taylor's Quill? We had like a stop and start video before where I just
it was like an awkward silence for a second, and then he goes, so how are things at the Taylor Quill?
Terrible question.
Yeah.
And I interrupted your flow. I'm
It's okay.
really sorry.
It's all right. Comic relief is never a bad thing. But
I'm sorry. Are you totally? Can you grab the thread of where you were?
not really. It's like a balloon that's like flying away.
That's floating away. Okay.